Puranas came into being through the kindness of rishis who wanted to explain the contents of the Vedas in a language that would be intelligible for ordinary people. Therefore, they put down a norm, Vedasya Upabrahmanartham Puranam, for expanding, expatiating and explaining the contents and truths of the Vedas. The Puranas came into being. There is always a controversy as to the authorship of Puranas. The traditional view is the Puranas were authored by Veda Vyasa, which are 80 in number. Others say, as in the case of Mahabharata, there must have been a panel. The term for a panel in Sanskrit is Vyasa. So a panel was responsible for the writing of all these Puranas. Even in naming them, there was controversy. But the controversy is resolved to some extent in the 13th century, when they constructed a verse to list the Puranas. Madvayam, Bhadvayam Chaiva, Bhratrayam, Vachatushtayam, Anapalinga, Kuskani, Puranani, Mahitale. In Ma, Matsya Purana and Markandeya Purana. In Bha, Bhagavata and Bhavishya Purana. In Bra, Brahma Purana, Brahmanda Purana and Brahma Vayutta Purana. Va Chatushtayam, in Va, Vamana Purana, Vishnu Purana, Varaha Purana and Vayu Purana. Anapalinga Kuskani, A Agni Purana, Na Nara Purana, Pa Padma Purana, Lil Linga Purana, Ga Garuda Purana, Ku Kurma Purana, Skanda Purani. Yes, 18 are listed in this way. Even in this there is a controversy. There is Sri Bhagavatam, which is very popular all over the south and also in the north. Especially for people of the ISKCON movement, Srimad Bhagavatam is an authority because it speaks only of Krishna and his greatness. But there are people who say that this was not the Bhagavatam that Vyasa wrote. Devi Bhagavatam is what Vyasa wrote. Each contains 18,000 verses. Each contains 12 skandhas. And therefore, each Devi Bhagavatam must have been written by Vyasa and not Srimad Bhagavatam. And another reason was the style of Sri Bhagavatam is very different from the style of other Puranas. And in Sri Bhagavatam, there is mentioned places which are contemporarily below the Vindhya region. So they have a feeling that it must have originated in the Deccan Peninsula. And people in the north, especially Tanjore, will say it must have been written by a Tirunelveli Brahmin. Because it begins a story, Tambraparni Nadi Yatra, it begins to say. That is, a question is asked, where will be bhakti even in Kali Yuga? It begins Tambraparni Nadi Yatra, then Vaihai, then Kaveri. And when speaking about Kaveri, Kaveri cha Mahapunya. Even Kaveri is a purifying influence. So, there's a dispute. We are not interested in the dispute. What we are interested in is the content of Puranas. The content of Puranas for the same story differs very much. In Matsya Purana, that's the story of Prahlada and Hiranyakashipu, as in other Puranas. Hiranyakashipu wanted to kill Prahlada for not uttering his name, but sticking to Vishnu, Narayana. He tried all his methods to kill him. He failed. Ultimately, it dawned upon him that after all, in case he died, Prahlada was going to be the king. What's the point in trying to quarrel with him? So they concluded a truce. And Prahlada was made heir apparent, crowned as heir apparent. Like that, they were living together for some years when one day a lion came into the court hall. Hiranyakashipu was very angry. He asked the doorkeeper, how could this come inside? He said, it pushed everybody around and it came here. Then Prahlada, he asked Prahlada, what is this? How did this come into this place? Prahlada said, this is not ordinary lion. This is Mahavishnu in lion form. And he began describing Vishwarupa of Mahavishnu. Hinduism said, oh, I can now see what is wrong with you. You must have drunk very heavily at dinner. And so you are seeing things which are not correct. And are you going to kill this lion here and now? So he jumped from his seat and fisted it. And as he was fisting it, the lion roared. He fell in a faint and was dead. Why was he killed? Nobody knows. In Vishnu Purana, all these travails are described in very great detail. Ultimately, there also a reconciliation takes place. And then the chapter ends here. And one day after Hiranyakashipu was killed by Narasimha, Prahlada ascended the throne. Likewise, in usually the Dakshayajna's episode, Sati wanted to go to the yajna of her father. Shiva prevented her, but she did not listen. She went there. She was insulted. She released her body by Yogagni, and then Shiva got very angry, destroyed the yajna, cut off the head of Daksha, and then after he pitied him, attached the head of a goat to him, and the yajna was finished with the appearance of Vishnu and all that. The same narrated in Matsya Purana is in a different way. She wanted to go to her father's place, but Shiva would not permit her. Then she said, you don't want to go there? No. I was not invited. No. You are afraid of the valor of my father. Your strength can do nothing, cannot match his. You are afraid of being exposed. And therefore you are sitting here. You can calmly stomaching the insult of his yajna, where no bhaga is given to you. Got very angry. He jumped from his seat in Kailas, appeared from the fire, destroyed Daksha. So many stories will be. So in Brahma Vaivarta Purana, there is a story of Krishna. And in that story of Krishna, in that Purana, the chief goddess, chief deity is Radha. Radha Lokam is the highest loka, beyond all Vaikuntha. So Krishna wanted to go there with Arjuna. As he went there, the doorkeeper asked, from where do you come? He explained. So Radha asked him, who are you? I am Krishna. Which Krishna? The Krishna who played with Radha in Gokula. I am the Radha. I have come here long ago. You are coming only here. You may be an impostor. And then Krishna had to prove that he was not an impostor. This sort of stories, change in stories will always be there. But fundamentally, in every Purana, there will be this description of creation, of the worlds, of the animals, of men, of kings, and finally the lineage with which the Purana ends. In all these cases, Puranic chronology is very tricky. A Purana in Bhagavata Purana and another Purana also, a reading of the future is given. After this, the Raja, this king, after this, prince, after that, and that. And then suddenly the lineage stops with one body. Gautama Putra Sri Sakarani will become the Raja. After that, there will be Pralaya. That Gautama Putra Sri Sakarani must have lived in Andhra Pradesh, somewhere in the 12th century or so. So the Puranic chronology ends there. So that sort of interpretation is there. In Bhavishya Purana, you have a mixture of fiction and truth. Some telling things are being said in Bhavishya Purana about what could happen in Kali Yuga. In Kali Yuga, the lamp should be hanging head down. In Kali Yuga, Taruni Prabhudagehe, Shalako Buddhidayakaha, Kumarishcha Prasuyante, Kalavasbendra. In Kali Yuga, the boss in the house will be the youngest daughter-in-law. The Shalako Buddhidayakaha, counselor will be the brother-in-law or the brother of this girl. And unmarried girls will have children, Kalavasbendra. And then Lanchanam, Keshadharanam. Beautifying decoration is in trying to play tricks with the hair of the man or the woman. And so Ravanyam, Keshadharanam. So somebody, and then some descriptions about the onset of epidemics also has been there. But there are many other traditions which are pure hypocrisy. According to Skanda Purana, there is a popular saying. Skanda Purana speaks about Guha and all those people, but there are many other things also in it. And the popular saying is, not even your truth is not even contained in the Skanda Purana, the repository of all falsehood. You tell a lie, but this lie cannot be found even in Skanda Purana. You are a greater liar than the Skanda Purana. So that's one thing. But in all this, there will be a common thread, namely creation of the world, creation of the beings, creation of men, creation of kingdoms and their extents and their rules, and finally the lineage with which it ends. But inside all Puranas, a particular deity will be held in exaltation. Saiva Purana, Shiva. Vishnu Purana, Vishnu. Shakti Purana, Shakti. In Brahma Purana, there is a Prakriti Ganda which eulogizes Shakti. There is a Ganesha Ganda which eulogizes Ganesha. A Krishna Janma Ganda eulogizes Krishna. So, every Purana will concentrate on one deity and his exaltation. And therefore, sometimes the other deities will be presented in a very contemptible manner. So, in the Devi Purana, in Hindu Devi Purana, all the other deities are being referred to as incompetent people, nincompoops, fools and all that. That's why there's a joke. There's a Kurma Purana. A Vaishnava thought Kurma Purana must be speaking about Vishnu. Actually, it is a conversation between Kurma Murti Vishnu and some Indra. So, it is speaking about the glory of Shiva, deriding Vishnu as much as possible. So, Kudiya Kadutadu Kurma Purana. So, I went to throw away the book. In Bhagavata Purana, ultimately, Vishnu is supposed to be the superior being. In Shiva Purana, Shiva is great, but there is no denigration of the other deities. Only in Kurma Purana and also in Devi Bhagavatam, there is a denigration of the other trinity. In Vamana Purana and Nrsimha Purana, you get a beautiful description of the emergence of the solar cycle, the planetary system. In Agni Purana, you have got a great and interesting sketch about how temples to be constructed, the details of temple consecration, and the way in which a particular musical note should be played to please Vishnu, another to please Shiva, a third to please Devi. All these are found in Agni Purana. But generally, the aim of the Purana was to explain some Vedic truth. You will have to sift through all the texts, the entire text, to find the Vedic truth. Because it will be available only in the hymns of characters addressing gods. And in the hymns you will find a mention of what the type of philosophy was at that time, what the concept of God was in that period, and how the approach to divinity was made through words and well-being. In Bhagavata Purana, there is a passage where a question is put: God is beyond all word and thought. Vedas are purely full of words and thought. How could Vedas describe him? How could you ever find a means by which they could describe him? There is a particular hymn called Shruti Gita, consisting of 24 verses. Each verse mentions a certain quality in the devotee which will ennoble him and make him accessible to the Lord. And one of them said, people wanted to find out some details about God, about Vishnu. They inquired with the rishis, they could not say anything. So they wanted to read the legends about his exploits. After reading them, they got satisfied with those exploits. They didn't even want bliss. This is what the Vedas said. We don't want bliss. We want only to be listening eternally to the story of these poets of the Lord. And ultimately it says, we know you are the infinite, and that even you cannot count your qualities. So in that way it gives an exceptionally different view of the Godhead. In Vayu Purana there is a mention about the passage of breath through the various channels in the body, occult centers in the body, how it works to agitate them for the better or for the worse, and contains valuable warning signals as to the harm that incompetent meditation can do, the death that can follow incompetent breath control, and the fatal events that follows misuse of breath control. It gives all those descriptions. And also it speaks of a method by which, by giving a particular tap at the base of the spine, you can make the kundalini, the internal fire, to rise up to the top of the forehead and then descend. This is what is being done by these magicians in the present, who call themselves gurus. This will not last for any time. It does not help the body to acquire any great strength, nor sharpen the intellect to make it more perceptible. Markandeya Purana is famous because of Devi Saptashati or Devi Mahatmyam. Devi Mahatmyam speaks about the conquest of Devi of the Asuras, Mahisha, Shimba, Nishimba, Asuras. And it consists of 13 chapters and 700 verses. 700 in Sanskrit is Saptashati, so it is called Saptashati. Devi Bhagavad Gita also consists of 700 verses. It's also Saptashati, but it does not get that name. But in the Saptashati, in the 700 verses, are contained nearly 32,000 mantras. The shlokas have to be arranged. The words in the shlokas have to be arranged in a particular fashion. At every stage, you will arrive at a particular mantra. By repeating this, you are actually repeating 32,000 mantras once. And therefore it is a mantra shastra. But it is being fed to you through the means of stories. That there are demons, Mahishasura, representing mental darkness. Shimba and Shimba symbolizing ego, the highest ego and bestiality. And they conquered them. It's the usual talk about war, arms and all those things are there. But the purpose of the text is, without your consciousness, you will be repeating these mantras, which are very powerful. That's why when evil forces are acting in a house, like Shunyam and other things, they recommend the recitation of Saptashati. There is a corresponding section in Srimad Bhagavatam dealing with the fight between Shiva and Vishnu in the Ushaparinaya, which is in a few verses contains the same mantras but in a shorter form. So these are intended as propitiatory spells for the benefit of humanity, and they are interested. Then Matsya Madhvayam Seva. That is Brahmanda Purana. It is the authority for those who want to understand how the mind gets polluted, even with its own consciousness, not deliberately, without its consciousness. How could this unconscious and not deliberate pollution be arrested? And how, by arresting that, the individual becomes a different person altogether. It also contains a section dealing with concerning the disassembling the body into its elements and reassembling them into them. And if that is possible, it's something like what the modern electronics says. You can be transported from one place to another by converting you into waves and receiving it at the other end. Only thing is, if the transport is not proper, you may lose an eye or a leg or a nose or something like that. So that also is mentioned in a very crude form in Brahmanda Purana. Brahma Vairutha Matsya. Kurma Purana is purely about Shiva. Not that I am against him, but nothing new is said there. Varaha Purana consists of description and results of all the festivals and vratas that are conducted in this world, in India, especially in South India. Yeah, there, for every vrata, we practice what are the materials needed, which is the deity to be worshipped, how we should be worshipped, and all that. And there is also a Pumsavana Kriya in it, that is, in the embryo, in the second or third month, you can do some mantra incantation, which will convert the male into a female or female into a male. That embryonic thing is also there. And from the standpoint of the physicians, there are some hints about herbs. According to my Ayurvedic friend, only 30 out of the 100 herbs mentioned are identifiable now. The other 70, that knowledge is completely lost. Garuda Purana generally is read during the funeral, post-funeral 13 days in a house, because that's a misnomer. You cannot read it in your house because it it is dealing with corpses. Actually, it is one of the three sections. Brahma Kanda as a story part, Preta Kanda leading with Achara Kanda, Mani Mantra Aushada. So this central part deals with the beyond, what happens to the body. That is not what a person who has not lived a proper life. When he dies, what happens to him? Where does he travel? What is the interval between the death of the person and his being reborn or being transported to hell? All those things are dealt with there. But the third section, Mani Mantra Aushada, if you get a translation, it will be very useful. From very simple things, how to do without mosquitoes and bugs. How to do without mosquitoes and bugs. How to avoid being polluted by bad air. How to purify the atmosphere without fumigation. All those things are indicated in the outer part. Mani part, of course, is gemology, and half of it is understandable. Another half is not easily understandable. Mantra, of course, is very good. Then, Linga Purana is Shiva Purana, repeating what is said in Kurma Purana. So almost all the Puranas in a way I have described, where they just differ from each other. In other cases, they are all saying the same things in different verses. Instead of praising Vishnu, they praise Shiva or Devi and vice versa. After the Puranas, the more important ones are the epics, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. There is a dispute about their chronology. According to traditional view, Rama Avatara came before Krishna Avatara. Rama lived many centuries before Krishna. And Mahabharata belonged to, was nearer to Kali Yuga, because Kali Yuga was born when Krishna left this world for his old place. So they say that this is later. That's a chronology given in the Ramayana and also in Bhagavatam about the birth of Rama and Krishna. Tatascha dvadashe mase chaitre navamike tatu nakshatre shadita devatye socha samsteshu panchesu griheshu karkate lagne vapata vindunasa kausalya ajanayad ramam sarvaloka namaskritam. The allotment of planets are actually described there. That type of allotment comes only in once in many thousands of years. And the year attributed by traditionalists to Ramayana, it correctly fits there. Likewise, for Krishna's birth indicated in Bhagavatam, if you calculate it, calculating the lunations that have gone before it, as well as the eclipses that have gone before it, you will arrive at the date of Krishna somewhere in 5177 July. So, chronologically you are right, but in between there are other details which are not reconcilable with any amount of effort on our part, either with chronology as based on the Puranas or with astronomy as given in the Vedas. So, instead of worrying about whether Rama was born on this day or Krishna was born on the other day, it's better to look into the contents about this. Ramayana is supposed to be the rendering in a different form of Sanatana Dharma. And the Sanatana Dharma, as understood, as applicable to the king as well as his subjects. The entire story of Rama consists in how he discharges kingly duties with an awareness of what his subjects owed to him, and how his subjects were actually enlisted in taking his decisions. Even when the coronation had to be decided, he had an assembly of the people with whom he consulted about whether Rama was fit to be coronated. So it's purely relating to Sanatana Dharma. And that Sanatana Dharma is related to the Dharma of Treta Yuga, the second Yuga after Krita Yuga. Treta Yuga is the Yuga when people used to attain salvation through performing yajnas. Many yajnas were performed during this period. On the contrary, in the Mahabharata, the story is about the very primitive animal instincts of man surfacing at certain periods and creating havoc. Those animal instincts are related to a battle in a place called Kurukshetra, where the Pandavas and Kauravas fought for their rights. The Kauravas representing the animal instinct and the Pandavas the divine instincts. Ultimately, as usual, good overcame evil and everybody lived happily ever after. But there is a particular contradiction here which I will talk about subsequently. The Mahabharata has always been a seedbed of controversy. One reason is that the Kauravas' right to the kingdom is disputed by some but supported by others. Those who dispute it say, according to the rules of inheritance, those who are handicapped by loss of vision or limbs cannot be kings. Dhritarashtra was permitted to be a king, but he had no right to be a king, and therefore his sons did not have a right to the kingdom. The other side says, the law of the period was the kingdom should go after a particular ruler, whoever it is, to the eldest male member of the oldest line. Dhritarashtra was elder to Pandu, Duryodhana was from the oldest line, and he was the eldest among the oldest, and therefore the crown should go to him. This problem was solved by Krishna himself once, when he said, the question of succession cannot be decided by rules of inheritance, but by the qualities of the successor. He gave a classic instance in this connection. There was a ruler by name Vena. He was an autocrat. He was not a believer in God. He was careless in the treatment of everybody except his own children. He swerved away from the path of dharma and practiced many acts of adharma, and therefore one day he was killed by the rishis, by their curse. Then his son Prithu became king, When he was crowned, people asked him, is the succession legal? His father had no right by his right. But the answer was, deciding by the qualities of the successor. He is a fit ruler who can, to a certain extent, compensate, more than compensate, for the mistakes of his father as a ruler. So, if Duryodhana is given the crown on the basis of the law of inheritance, there will be no dharma left in this world, and all his associates are notorious for their egoism, land grabbing, and womanism, and therefore the crown does belong only to the sons of Pandu. Another dispute about it is the treatment that was given to Karna in the story of Mahabharata. He was a valorous person. Left to himself, he was more than a match to Arjuna. If he was allowed to be a match, more than a match to Arjuna, then Pandavas will be defeated or exiled again, and the Kauravas will come to power. And Krishna played every stratagem in his armory to make him as weak as possible. Robbed him of his armor, divine armor, given by Indra, robbed him of his valor in archery by inviting on him the curse of Parashurama, and the curse of a Brahmin whose calf was killed by his chariot. Therefore his chariot sank into the earth. And then he was asked, his mother was sent to him to tell him, to get a boon, that he would not fight against anybody except Arjuna, and he will not use any weapon with him more than once. So after doing all this, there was still one danger. When Karna shot the Nagastra, Krishna had to sink the chariot many feet down into the earth, so that the Astra took away only the crown of Arjuna. Many of these things have been done. Many of these wrong things have been done by the Lord to protect the Pandavas. What is the explanation? As I said earlier, when evil has to be substituted, you can practice greater evil to subjugate it. That's what he did. Then, in the Mahabharata, Bhishma is a character who is the grandsire, great grandsire. And he fought on the sides of Duryodhana, saying that he had been subsisting on the charity of his father and himself. But the question that is never asked is, he was the dispenser of justice for the family. How did it occur to him that he would forsake his promise to Ganga, not to swerve away from the path of Dharma, and abet in everything that was being done by Duryodhana and his associates? Ultimately what happened was, he laid himself on a bed of arrows and got himself bled completely. His explanation was, this blood had been generated by partaking of the food offered by Duryodhana. I am washing away this sin by this way. That's one way of explaining it. But the most important and most consoling part of his story is, he lived to explain to Yudhishthira the Dharma Shastra in 2 cantos, Shanti Parva and Anushasana Parva. Any doubt that you have about God and man, about duty between man and wife, between a father and his children, between the king and his subjects, on the question of rulership, the duties of a ruler, all those things, anything that you want, you find it in the Mahabharata, Adhishasana and Shanti Parva. For that alone, those 2 volumes required to be printed into English. Of course, one man has done it. The whole Mahabharata has been translated in very readable English by Ganguly. He has not omitted any portion, not been untrue to any text. So that is a work. But this can be taken away from it and put like that. And Mahabharata also is supposed to contain 100,000 verses. The original Mahabharata was less than half of that. People who came later have added to it its contents and inserted it into Mahabharata. If you have a Krishna Yacha Prashna, there is a Marsha Prashna. If there is a Bhagavad Gita, there is a Uttara Gita. And most absurd of it all was the question put by Dhritarashtra just when the fight was about to commence between his sons and his brother's sons. He put the question to Sanjaya, tell me from which kingdom all these kings have come, what is the extent of their territory, what are the crops cultivated there, what is the natural wealth. A question covering economic geography of kingdoms, comprising 13 chapters. No father who was more anxious for his sons would put such a question on eve of the day. It is clearly an interpretation. Bhagavad Gita consists of 700 verses. Even if we repeat it very fast, it will take an hour and, even if we repeat it very fast, it will take an hour and 20 minutes. Suppose, how was it that Arjuna was able to listen to it, Krishna was able to talk about it when the fight was about to commence? Is it not unnatural? This question was posed to Rajaji, but here an answer. He said, there is a family in which a great-grandmother was alive. She was about 100 years old. She had many children, grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren. One day, the children decided they must have a group photo with the grandmother. It was more than a college group photo. Too many people, too many heads. So they took a photograph all right. In that photograph, this grand old lady was just a speck, could be very difficult, identified only with great difficulty. So when the children wanted separately the picture of the portrait of the grandmother, it was extracted and enlarged. Like that, Arjuna was given the core message of the Bhagavad Gita, Karmandeva adhikaraste ma paryosha kadachana. You do your duty, don't worry about anything. And that was annotated and expanded by later people into 700 slokas. That was his tradition. But even then, even the Ramakrishna Mission says it, and I agree with them. The language of the Gita is closer to Advaita than other schools of philosophy. There was no commentary on Bhagavad Gita before Shankaracharya. So Adi Shankara must have composed it and inserted it into the Mahabharata. Whatever it be, it's a text, you see, which is very valuable in the sense. In simple language, it expounds how dharma can be practiced, even by those who are not able to understand the details of dharma, by giving the aphorisms that they are expected to follow. And also, it provides how to console oneself in a crisis of birth and death, how one should conduct himself to become a better individual, to evolve into a personality that will become the envy of people. All that is contained there in those 18 chapters. Of course, there are so many annotations. To read the Gita, you must have a knowledge of Sanskrit, simple Sanskrit. You can understand it better than through all these annotations. All these annotations try to put in their ideas into the meaning of the words as intended by the text. And therefore, there will be an eternal quarrel between which is correct, which is not correct, which interpretation is truer to the text and which is not. The Bhagavad Gita in the 18 chapters, one chapter describes the form of the Lord as comprising everything, the Vishwarupa. When you read it with a translation, you will understand what is meant by permeation of the infinite in all creation and how it acts through that permeation. The next chapter is called Bhakti Yoga, how to develop an access to it from the standpoint of the individual who has nothing more than his ears to listen to voices, his mouth to speak the language of the gods, and his simple understanding of Sanskrit. If you read the Bhakti Yoga, you are given a path to bliss, which is the easiest and which does not have any internal contradictions which confuse Pandits and have occasioned too many explanations for a single and simple voice. Then there is also the 13th chapter in it, which speaks about the Kshetra and Kshetrajna, the body and the God residing within. When you read it, you must remember that when people ask you to do namaskar or pranam to your elders, you are not doing a pranam to them, to their body, but to the God within them. You cannot bow to the God within you by yourself. When you bow to a superior, you are bowing to the God within him. Smaller, lesser people will not be prepared to bow to younger people because they say, I am older than you. And therefore, the practice came into being. When you do see an old elder person, you do pranam to him. And you say, you also list your gotra, nama and all those things. But guhashaya eva na dehamanide. If that man expects that you must bow to him, you avoid him. Because bowing to him will not help you spiritually. When his ego is such that he thinks that the namaskar belongs to him, he doesn't deserve it. But you can't put this question to anybody because you will become very unpopular. Because our custom is to bow to everybody who is an elder to you. Secondly, Rokhe, Bhavaya, Amisha Madhya Seva, Nityastu Jantuhu, Vahitatra Chodana, Vyavastitistatra Vivaha Yajna, Suragrahehi, Asinivrittvishta. That's a passage in Bhagavata which corresponds to what Gita says. Sacrifices are useless. They entangle you in birth after birth. They say that. Bhagavata says in a different fashion. Man has a natural inclination to taste liquor, to eat beef, and to have sex. But that must be limited from committing any excesses. And therefore the Vedas said, if you want sex, marry and then we get and have sex. After two or three children are born, you automatically restrain yourself from sex. Likewise, you can have a small quantity of liquor and a small quantity of beef in the smallest areas. Even that costs, in those days it cost 3,000 rupees. It will now cost 15,000 rupees. For just half a peg of liquor and just a small ball of beef, if you have to spend 15,000 rupees, you will think twice. So that way, your mind should be taken away from doing things which will not be useful and which will help you understand the real purpose for which you have been created, not to perform yajnas, but to discover a way to escape from the tangles into which yajna will lead you and reach the Lord who is your birthright. Then Bhagavad Gita also says there is no greater or simpler path to attain to the Godhood than total surrender. Total surrender means manasa, vacha, karmana, by word, deed and action. All of these things, karma is important, you do the namaskara. Vacha, you recite a sloka. That manasa, surrender in the mind is very difficult to get. Because surrender must be without conditions. God is not a trader. You can't offer a quid pro quo for what you want to get from him. But that's exactly what is being done nowadays. You offer a coconut to Ganesha to pass an examination. If you don't pass the examination, Ganesha will not get the coconut. This is barter dealing. Bhagavata ridicules it. God is not spread his wares to be exchanged for what you want. And therefore, it should be unconditional surrender. How could it be unconditional? To banish from mind all associations or ideas or thoughts which may have some connection with some suppressed or felt desire. The moment you see the mind released from those desires, mind is unconditioned. With that unconditioned mind, when you surrender, you will not be entering into any barter with him. You will want to, and then, this is secret, you must want God for his own sake and not for anything else. Because God is a clever person. If you want anything, he will grant it and then disappear. If you want him for his own sake, he will dilly-dally for a long time, test you, and ultimately he will take you to him. So, the surrender will be such that without any condition whatsoever, you should be able to rise from the limitations of desire and conquer your aspirations which lead you only to bondage and not freedom. Talking about desire, in the second chapter, something is mentioned about what desire is like. When you desire something, when you don't get it, you will get angry. When you get angry, you lose your mental balance. When you lose your mental balance, you cease to be a human being. This was illustrated by a Pandit through a peculiar way, in a peculiar way. We know Hindus, especially Brahmins, do not eat leavings of the previous night on certain ceremonial occasions, especially New Moon Day. One fellow was eating one of the leavings of the previous night in the morning of New Moon. When he was expected to do some tarpana for his friend asked him, "Why are you transgressing rules and eating this?" Because if I don't eat this food, all the soup that is prepared with onion will go waste. What? Onion on Amavasya day? Without onion, I cannot become stronger. Why should you be stronger than what you are now? Because I require strength to plow the field. What? Do you plow the field? Don't you have a farmer for that? No. This is a field where tulasi has to be cultivated. Tulasi has to be plowed into before cultivation. Everybody worships tulasi. You are going to plow it. Why? Because for cultivating this crop, I should use only the pipal wood. Pipal is the arashamaram, which you use for as a puja up to a destination. So people worship pipal. You are trying to make a plow of it. Because only when you plow with pipal, the field with tulasi, ganja can grow there. Opium will grow there easily. What do you want opium for? I have a Muslim girl, she can't do without opium. So we began with Vagaya somewhere, he ended with opium. Desire will always have a chain like this. So when you commit the first instance, it will not go at all. And once it is come, ideas will get reduced. When the ideas are received, association of ideas will automatically disappear. And on the basis of that, your thinking will be unconditional. Your surrender will be unconditional. You will not be entering into a battle with God. This is the basic lesson of the Gita. Moreover, there is a particular practice nowadays in South India to conduct what is called Gita Yajna. Gita Yajna is lecturing on the Gita for 18 days or 16 days or 6 days or 3 days, and then performing a yajna, Gita Mahayajna, at the end of it. The lectures on Gita are all square. Now nobody can object to them. To perform a yajna using Gita is absurd, because Gita is intended to abstain from all these karmas. as all these rituals. And then when I asked one Pandit, why are you doing it? Because we are born not only because of our past actions, because of the relics of past action, karma vasana. So you do homa, offering the karma vasana into the fire. Then there is no need for any Gita at all. You start a fire and put karma vasana there. You should be free from karma. Is it? No. No. Great people have allowed me to do it, and that's why I am doing it. Andheneva niyamana iva andaha. The blind leading the blind. Gita Yajna now is very popular. There are many people who are able to expound it in a brilliant manner to an English-speaking, English-knowing audience. And at the same time, they are able to recite the text along with the explanation. Many people don't do it, so that you'll be able to immediately see whether the explanation is in accordance with the text or not. I had a bad experience in that sense. There was a great exponent of Gita, a Swamiji. He used to conduct this Japa Yajna for nearly 18 days in one place. I was then in the Hindu and editor about the Hindu. My editor wanted to get him for giving a few lectures in his near his home. So he wanted me to go and listen to him, find out how he expounds his Gita. I went there. When he knew that I came from the Hindu, he knew it was proper advertisement for him. So he told me, come summon me. Today I will explain the verse that you choose me to explain. So I gave him a particular verse. He spoke for an hour and a half, never went anywhere near it. He never went anywhere near the text. There are some people like that. But generally, 3 people are doing it very honestly. That Parsaradi, his daughter, and one other person, forget his name. Their rendering is very excellent in accordance with the spirit of the text. After the Puranas and Gita, we have the Upa Puranas, subsidiary Puranas, which tried to explain both the contents of the Puranas and the Gita in an easier language for the benefit of the lay minds. But most of these Puranas were written by very inferior intellects. And therefore, though they try to repeat some ideas of the original, they put it in a language which jars, which says, if you don't do this, tomorrow you will die. You will not be alive. If you don't follow this precept, if you don't recite this hymn 8 times, your son will die after tomorrow. Some of these Puranas have such warnings given. Otherwise, they are no improvement upon the originals, of which they had been the great part. Among them, some are excellent. Nrsimha Purana. Though it deals with Nrsimha, it has many, many things to say about high philosophy, and from which, short of the Purvatapaniya and Uttaratapaniya Upanishad, which are equal in their excellence to all the remaining 10 Upanishads. For a matter of that, I have not mentioned about the Upanishads. There are 10 of them. Ishakena, Kata Prashna, Munda Mandukya, Tittiri, Aitareya, Brihadaranya, Chandogya. They are the 10 Upanishads. I will try to explain a little of them subsequently, because it cannot be easily condensed in 2 or 3 sentences. I should just say all the 10 Upanishads are repositories of Hindu religious philosophy.